Tim, thank you for joining me today. We're in the technology industry, and I think it's fair to say we often talk about the next big thing, a quantum leap.
Yes,
But actually, this feels like a pretty special moment for CluedIn.
I would agree.
So why is the combination of CluedIn and OpenAI such a game changer?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would echo that excitement. I think some of the ways that we at CluedIn are thinking about this could be the most exciting part of technology in our entire career. I think the power that OpenAI has brought to the data industry and CluedIn is this ability to finally put some pretty powerful tools in the hands of business. Fixing data challenges is what CluedIn's good at. Has always been something that's been, I guess, notoriously done by engineering, done by IT, and out of the hands of like the everyday user. Suddenly, combination of CluedIn and OpenAI brings that power back to business. Some of the ways that this kind of collaboration is going to come to fruition with CluedIn and OpenAI is to be able to speed up what was inherently a lot slower projects, harder to crack, time-consuming, costing money. And this is part of the revolution we're in right now.
Right, thank you. Is the market ready for this? Or, to put it another way, why is now the right time to embrace AI within MDM?
Yeah, so I mean, let's be honest. AI had been in the market for many, many years. The innovators in the industry were early adopters. But I think one of the things that the last few years has taught us is that although we had great aspirations for AI and machine learning, not all of these projects made it to fruition. They didn't actually yield the proper value that was, I guess, promised from the inception of AI. And I guess to use your words before, there's been an obvious quantum leap in this space to the point where what seemed potentially achievable with a lot of work, with the best people in the industry, with what could be endless budgets, has now been packaged up in a format that is ubiquitous, approachable, easy to integrate with, easy to interface with, and not something that is only usable by data science teams. And so is the market ready for this? I don't think the market knows what's in front of them. I think that to some degree, you're clued in and the rest of the market will find out along the way of how much AI will be playing a role, not in just our day-to-day lives, but in us putting these foundations of data in place to get those insights always wanted to generate, right? And I think this will just be such a huge accelerator. I think we'll learn a lot along the way. I think the market will evolve in all different directions, where OpenAI will just be one of the many models that are available to us. OpenAI, I would argue, understands a lot of general data. And what you'll see is a lot of businesses hyper specialize on models that are fantastic at understanding the pharmaceutical, or they're fantastic at understanding the consumer goods industry. And so these models will be democratized to the point where different markets will end up using different models for their specific cases. But I think that's what also makes it an exciting time, is that unknown. To some degree, and I've had the fortune of working with the Microsoft team here at CluedIn for the last 2 or 3 months on this, planning the integration between the native CluedIn MDM system on Azure and the Azure OpenAI pieces. And through that, we have yet to realize its limitations. And in that, I can see why the market is not ready for it. But at the same time, I think diving in head first and understand where the value is the best way for us to stabilize this in the market so that everyone can adopt.
Sure. So just picking up on what you were saying about it's a bit of a learning journey, there's definitely an element of the unknown. How would you counter or how would you address anyone that's kind of not that confident in AI, perhaps doesn't have the trust? How do you know that AI is going to get it right?
Yeah. that adoption is probably the biggest problem that's going to come from AI. And that's always been the kind of challenge with AI. It's how do you make explainable AI? It's this black box where something goes in, something magical comes out, and how much can a business really build their operations off? It could work sometimes, and it just doesn't. What's changed with OpenAI is the ability to also ask it to explain exactly why it made a decision. The other thing is that let's all move forward with the kind of the idea that it will get things wrong all the time. It will get things wrong all the time. So how do you close that loop? Well, the ways that we're doing this at CluedIn is that every place that we integrate, we're not just asking it to provide the answers to the questions that we're giving it, but we're asking it to provide a level of confidence in its answer and also an explanation around what brought it to that answer. And what suddenly was, hey, who is the CEO of Google? Comes back with the right answer. Okay, but please explain the reasoning of what got you to that point. And also, please help me understand to what level of confidence you have in that answer. And what this allows you to do is bring humans into that circle. Right? It allows for the things that aren't answered with high confidence. You can surface that to a human to kind of play that role of, no, like, listen, look at that explanation. That makes complete sense. They might even go off and, Google it and see, yep, that's exactly right. And it allows them to kind of reinforce the engine. Yep, you did that right. In some cases, you might need to augment the system itself to correct it. Say, listen, I realize what you did there. You explained why you did it, but let me tell you why you might have not done it right. And the beauty that Azure OpenAI brings to CluedIn is that this is your own model. This is your own model that you get to curate. Think of it like your child. You get to bring it up and, in a way, sway it in things that are maybe you shouldn't be focusing on and push you in the right directions of, what produces a better solution. So you can kind of reinforce these models to update it and train it and make it better over time. So that would be some of the reasons I highlight.
I mean, honestly, it sounds fantastic. It sounds amazing. But let's be honest, CluedIn is not the only AI game in town. What's different?
It's a good question. I think it is very much, I think that's what's exciting. It's very much an even playing field for everyone. In fact, you'll see the majority of products integrate OpenAI at an accelerated fashion. Because if you've identified that value, realizing how many places. For those of you who have had time to play with the system, you'll realize that the key is in the way you ask these questions. In that, asking the question in a particular way will often yield some really odd results that as humans you would say, no, even I know the answer and that is wrong. And the majority of the time it comes back to your ability to provide enough context in the question that you're providing. Here's a good example. So my name is Tim Ward. It's a very common name, right? It's just absolutely everywhere. And if you were to Google it, I will probably show up on page 64, right? But 63, I'll take 63. So, and you wouldn't blame an engine for figuring out that maybe it chose a different Tim Ward in its response. But suddenly, to provide more context to the question, that's where it becomes interesting. So one of CluedIn's unique selling points, one of its advantages in this, is that the way it stores your most important data is in a graph, in a network. Think of it like LinkedIn. And that the relationships that you build with other people on LinkedIn, they're not always direct. They're indirect, right? So you might be 3 or 4 hops away from someone, but there's still some type of connection. Because CluedIn naturally stores your data in that same format. Imagine that same example of asking this engine, who is Tim Ward? But then you provide it with, well, okay, I've looked into our graph. I've realized that Tim's connected to this email that's also connected to Natasha. And over here, there's another calendar event where Rob from our marketing team is also. Taking that context and then asking the engine, who is Tim Ward, who is affiliated with Natasha and Rob from there? And suddenly you start to get this pinpointed answer, this focused answer back from the engine, because it also is understanding the context between how all these objects are actually connected. Our uniqueness in this space is our ability to ask the right questions with the right amount of context to produce a more precise result.
That's a great example. Do you have any more? Just even a couple of examples of how a customer might use this and might get some real kind of tangible value in a scenario that you see every day.
Yeah, I think one of the ones that I'm most excited about because I see the biggest return of investment. I think the eras of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and BI, what they did to us as companies is they put this spotlight that we probably don't have the right foundation of data to even allow those projects to go ahead. And it could be for compliance reasons. It could be for data was too hard to discover. It could be that the data we're feeding into these engines wasn't clean, it wasn't harmonized. It just was such a hassle to actually use. And in the end, we weren't getting those insights out of it. Because of this, data governance over the last 5 to 10 years has just been the kind of hot topic. And it's really about how do I put process into this so I can yield value. One of the challenges, I guess, with data governance has always been that it's been top down, in that it's kind of a way of a business to say, listen, we've got all these systems, we've got all these locations, we've got all this technical debt. From a top-down approach, let me put in all the rules and policies about how that data should be. So if all these rules are actually to be enforced, that should fix a lot of these problems that we're having with, our reports not presenting the right data because the data is slightly different in each system, but really representing the same thing. And suddenly what I think is so exciting about the OpenAI integration with CluedIn is that these policies that you write suddenly become the enforceable as well. I mean, just think about something like we need all of our phone numbers that we have on our employees to be in a common standard, right? From a top level idea, sounds great. That sounds like a great policy to have. Easier said than done to actually enforce it because of all the gnarled nature of data that they don't all conform with the same policies. What's exciting about the OpenAI integration is that suddenly the policy is exactly what you would write to the OpenAI engine to do the work in plain English, right? So a policy like, please turn all phone numbers into this standard. That is the exact thing you would write into CluedIn now to go off and change all of those phone numbers into that. So bridging that gap between where we want to get to in our data that was done through all these governance policies to the point where actually it's now enforced and done. That's now accelerated an immense level. That's just one example of many of how CluedIn is going to be building and accelerating that integration.
Tim, thank you so much for your time. What a great time to be at CluedIn. I have to say, thank you very much.
Yeah, let's more sessions like this. Thanks.
Thanks.